Hi everyone, I'm MaryAnn. I'm a voice coach and visual artist from Singapore, currently in Singapore, and welcome to another installment of my weekly vlog series, Find Your Voice. So this is where I share whatever it is that I am learning or have learned so far as an everyday singer, as a voice coach, as a singing instructor, as someone who is all about expressing myself authentically and discovering who I really am and how do I express that, not just through my physical voice, but through everything that I do in my life and how I live my life. And ultimately, I believe that we are always constantly trying to express ourselves in so many different ways, primarily through our physical voice. And ultimately, this whole journey of life that we're on is really about finding our capital V voice, which is whatever it is that you're called to create over your lifetime, such that when you look back at the end of your life, you can see what this amazing masterpiece has been all about this whole time, and what is that thing, that one thing that you have always wanted to express. It's definitely not an easy journey, this whole journey of finding our true selves and discovering our dreams and pursuing them and living something that is true and authentic to yourself. But I would say that, no journey in life is easy. I mean, if you choose a conventional path, just because most people seem to be doing that and you choose that, there's totally nothing wrong with that too. But even that comes with its own challenges and difficulties as well. So at the end of the day, it's really about which one is more worthwhile for you. Which one, after going through all of it, you can say that all those difficulties that you went through, all those challenges that you went through were well worth it. And of course, when you look back at the end of your life, can you really say that you have lived it well and meaningfully and that you don't have any regrets? So that's what I believe this whole journey is about. And through expression and singing, this is the way that I help people to discover more of their true and authentic selves and get connected to a deeper part of themselves. And of course, to improve your voice and your expression as well, because this is something that we use in pretty much every single aspect of our lives. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, or you can also directly message me through any one of my links or whatever write-ups that you see. Well, whatever email address or URLs or whatever that you see in the write-ups attached to these videos. Just today I had a session with one of my regular ongoing clients. He doesn't really have a session with me like all the time. I would say maybe like 2 weeks to 6 weeks. Every 2 to 6 weeks then he will book a session with me. I have been very inspired by his process, because when he came to me and when he started these sessions at the end of 2020, so somewhere in December 2020, he started these sessions with me. He was completely what we would call tone deaf. Now, the thing about tone deaf is that a lot of times there's this conception that, oh, I can't sing because I'm tone deaf, or like, I've been told that I can't join the choir because I'm tone deaf. And we kind of know that tone deaf means that, well, you're not able to keep a tune, or you're not able to hear, like if someone plays a note on the piano, you don't know how to sing it, and then you try to sing it and it doesn't match at all. And a lot of times a tone deaf person won't even be able to tell that they're not singing the note accurately. So he came to me with totally no background in singing. I asked him whether he remembers singing nursery rhymes in kindergarten or something, and he's like, nope. So this was a challenge for me, because he wanted to work on his voice and make it less monotonous, and he wanted to improve and become more expressive in his speaking as well. And so the first session I had with him, and I started pressing like keys on the keyboard, and he could not sing the note. Like, he could not sing the right note. He would always sing like either way too high or way too low. And then when I tried to tell him, like, go a little bit lower, go a little bit higher, it's like it takes a while, and we would still be on that one note like for the whole session. Like, this was the most, I would say, tone deaf person that I've ever worked with. But I also know from my training that only 2% of people in the world are actually like really tone deaf. And that's because, like, when they were born, there's something wrong about their physical vocal structure or their physical hearing structure, and therefore they're really not able to hear the note accurately and replicate the note accurately. But otherwise, for most people, if you're not able to listen to a note and replicate it accurately, most of the time it just has to do with a lack of training, or you have like too much noise in your head, and so what you hear when it goes through your system, it comes out as something different. Yeah, so there could be many reasons why a person would seem like they're tone deaf when actually there's really nothing wrong with their physical structures of hearing and singing. So with this client, I was like, okay, just be patient, just encourage him, just keep going at it. And 6 months later, when he had his session with me today, and like I said, he doesn't even come to sessions, he doesn't even book sessions with me all the time or frequently. It's like every 2 to 6 weeks. He's not exactly the most consistent at practicing either. So I had a session with him earlier today, and it has been 4 weeks since he last had a session with me. And in those 4 weeks, he told me he only practiced the first 2 weeks. I didn't ask how frequently, and then for the next 2 weeks he had a sore throat because the weather was really dry, and so his throat was hurting, and so he didn't practice at all. And when I got him to show me what he had practiced, because I just gave him a very simple exercise of just singing the notes on the keyboard, specific ranges of notes, just small ones. So previously when I gave him these small sections of notes, like maybe 5 or 6 notes continuously on the keyboard, just to practice singing up and down, one by one, he would do that in our session, and then sometimes he'll be able to do it accurately, and then the next time he does it, it's like he's either singing way too high or way too low. And then the next time he does it again, it's the same thing, and then I always have to try and tune him back to what the keys were. Or sometimes he wouldn't listen to the notes and he would try to guess what they are instead of actually singing them. And I would have to remind him to listen to the note first before actually singing it. Sometimes he would also be thinking too hard, is this the right note, is this the right note? And then usually when a client does that, they definitely don't sing the right notes, because you're overthinking it instead of just hearing it and producing the sound. And so today, at the start of our session, I asked him, okay, show me what is it you've practiced. And he basically sang in an octave on a keyboard, from one C note to the next C note, there's a total of 12 keys that are in there, 12 notes that are in there. And he was able to sing about, I think 7 or 8 of them accurately, going up the scale, going up note by note, without me having to assist him, accurately. And then I asked him to come back, to sing the notes back down, and he sang them back down. And again, it was with 90% accuracy, and I was just stunned because I knew he could do it. It's just when I don't know, it's as a coach, you have to believe that your client can do it, right? Because otherwise, the stand that you're making for them is no longer there if you can't believe that they can do it. But still, when they actually do it, it is unbelievable. It is amazing that just 6 months ago, this person was totally tone deaf, and now he was able to sing a set of 7 or 8 notes and get them at 90% accuracy. And I couldn't believe it. And I also noticed that he was sounding out the notes a lot more, especially the ones towards the higher part of the octave, because it required him to go a little bit into the upper register of his voice. And this is something that he had never done before. It's his first time ever singing into those high notes. And for a while, actually, he wasn't even able to get there because he couldn't figure out how to do them. And all of a sudden, he was able to do that, and to do it accurately and to hit the right notes as well. And I would say overall, he doesn't get it 100% every single time, but overall his accuracy has improved tremendously. And now he's even able to go up and down the set of notes without me having to pause him and try to correct and tune him back to the right note. He would just be able to sing up and down them. And he can even tell me which are the notes that he had sang that weren't right. Even though he may not be able to tell exact why they aren't right or whether he's singing too high or too low, but he can tell me okay, the first 3 notes just now, I don't think I sang them right. And so now he's able to hear that, which obviously means that he was, he's not one of the 2% of tone deaf people in the world. It's just a lack of training and a lack of exposure to music. And yeah, and that's probably also why his voice is monotonous, is because if you're not able to hear a wide range of notes, chances are then, you're only you'll only sound out the ones that you are able to hear and the ones that you are comfortable with. And a lot of times people with a monotonous voice, usually it's because they're not able to hear and replicate the higher notes or even lower notes than their voice. And so they will just comfortably stay within a very comfortable range for their voice, which is for most people, our speaking range is usually where it's most comfortable for us to speak, unless you have like intentionally made your voice lower or higher for whatever reason. But whatever it is that is natural for you, that's where you're most comfortable at. Anyway, what I wanted to share in today's video is that only 2% of the world are tone deaf. And if you think that you're tone deaf, or you've been told that you're tone deaf, and because of that you kind of feel like, oh, singing is not really your thing, and maybe, you know, like doing stuff with your voice is not really your thing anyway, so there's no reason for me to work on it. Maybe you're worried that it's going to take a lot of time and effort to make some progress. Well, I'm telling you from this example, it took him only 6 months. And this is like with not even like consistent lessons. Okay, his lessons were like every 2 to 6 weeks. In fact, I think there was like a 2-month break somewhere in between. He was not very consistent with his practice up until maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, where he would tell me he practiced 4 days a week for like 2 weeks. So he's still not the most consistent in terms of practice, but in spite of all that, over 6 months he managed to, like, you know, go from his 3 or 4 note range and an inability to hear any other notes and replicate them, to being able to replicate like 8 notes in an octave, going up and down like almost at 100% without my assistance. And he can even hear when he's singing off key. And I even taught him like a very simple song, and he's also able to sing the chorus of that song with like 80% accuracy. Yeah. So if you're tone deaf, or you've been told you're tone deaf, it's really not that difficult an issue to fix. And the whole thing, you know, ultimately it comes back down to whether this is something you really want to work on, in terms of improving your expression, in terms of having a more lively voice, a more dynamic voice, a voice that has a wider range, that is not just limited to, you know, 3 or 4 notes, but you have like 10 notes that you can play with in your voice, because that's also where our expressiveness in our tone comes from. Yeah, so this is someone who, you know, even with that kind of sporadic sessions with me and not like very consistent practice, was able to break through that. And I believe that you can too. And if you were to book like, you know, weekly sessions with a singing instructor or a voice coach, and you just work on that, you would see progress in a very, very short amount of time, provided of course that you consistently practice on your own as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and if you have enjoyed today's video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next week.